It's Wednesday night, so that means it must be time for In the Pits with StockCar Scott. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, StockCar Scott.
Howdy race fans! As you know, I am StockCar Scott, and this is my little show about racing I like to call In the Pits. And In the Pits is now brought to you thanks to a generous sponsorship by Monte Carlo Express Delivery, serving the courier needs of the Seattle area for over a decade. Please like us on Facebook. Well, this past weekend was full of motorsports triumphs and tragedy, but we'll start off with Friday, and Friday's highlight. The old man sits on the pole at the Watkins Glen Cheez-It 355. Yes, Jeff Gordon still got it, folks. I mean, he's showing us race after race this season that the old man can still run with the best, and he proved it Friday by taking the pole in that new style of knockout qualifying. Okay, who are the rest of them? It don't matter where they lined up, except for Junior, I think, was in the top 10. But anyway, on Saturday, they had the knockout qualifying again for the Nationwide Series, and Bad Brad Keselowski, he won the pole for that race, and half a dozen other Cup drivers came over to steal points from the Nationwide guys and get a little practice there at Watkins Glen. And the reason I say steal points is because they don't get the points, but then neither do the guys behind them, which is where the Nationwide guys usually finish. But all the 7 Cup drivers finished in the top 10 with the exception of Kyle Larson, who was there, like I said, to get him a little extra practice there at Watkins Glen, turning left and right. Now, the Nationwide guys did pretty good for themselves. The ones that are in the top 5 in points pretty much ran very well for Nationwide guys. Chase Elliott was 6th in that road course race there at Watkins Glen. Elliott Sadler from Virginia, there you go, was finished 7th in his Joe Gibbs Toyota. Ty Dillon was 8th in Pop Pop's number 3 Camaro. And his teammate Brian Scott, no relation, was 10th in the finishing order there at Watkins Glen for the Nationwide race. And the other top 5 Nationwide guy, Regan Smith, finished 17th. So that sort of kept things about the way that they were in points, because, like I say, the Cup guys take points, and so the Nationwide guys finishing all close together didn't jumble points up a whole bunch. The race itself was won by the fella who started in 4th place in the number 09 Stanley Tools Petty Mustang, and that was Marcus Ambrose from Tasmania. The old Tasmanian Devil is really good at road courses. In fact, this is the 4th time he has won a Nationwide race there at Watkins Glen. And like I was saying earlier about points, didn't change a whole lot. Chase is still 1st, Regan Smith is 2nd, Elliott Sadler's 3rd, Dillon and Brian Scott for RCR are 4th and 5th. Now, there was another stock car race on at Berlin Raceway. That's up in Michigan, and it's owned by former NASCAR Nationwide champion and Cup Rookie of the Year, Johnny Benson. And he has an ARCA race up there ever so often. And this one was the Federated Auto Parts 200, but no TV coverage, folks. Just had to follow along online. So I caught up on it later and found that the guys that have been running up front did so again. Mason Mitchell was first in points right now, and he was on the pole, which earned him enough points along with his 10th place finish to keep him in the lead in points. And the winner started on the outside. That was Grant Enfinger from Alabama, woo-woo, in his number 90 Chevrolet. You know, I'm happy about him being in a Chevy now. And like I said, he won the race. He led the first lap. He led the most laps. And it was really his day. Second place was Austin Wayne Self from Austin, Texas. And of course with Mitchell getting the pole and finishing in the top 10, and Grant Enfinger winning the race. It didn't really change the points a whole lot. They're still first and second, and the old man, 9-time ARCA champion, Frank Kimmel, is still in third. Okay, after the nationwide race, my wife and I headed south to South Sound Speedway for a night of racing, and all of that accumulating in the big Miller 200 that evening. The weather was great. It was a little bit warm during the day, but the evening didn't cool off too much, so it was really nice evening of racing. We got there in time to see the trophy dashes, which started off with the Outlaw Compacts. They had their trophy dash that was won by number 18, Jason Getz. And then the next trophy dash that we saw was, well, I think there may have been some legend cars in there, but that's when I'm not big on them, so that's when I go to the snack bar and stuff. Anyway, so the next one that I got on tape, on video, that you can watch on my YouTube channel, there's StockCar Scott on YouTube. Woohoo! The next one there was the two late model races, trophy dashes, as they got ready for the big Miller 200. Now the first one had a couple of veterans in there, like Dan Obrist and Ron Eaton, and they ran real well, had a nice 4-lap trophy dash there, which Dan Obrist won. 12 must have been a lucky number for trophy dashes, because the winner of the A-Main trophy dash also was number 12, Jessica Dana, and she ran out front of some pretty stiff competition there with Kelly Mann in the number 9, who had set fast time. Also J.J. Hamilton, and who else was in that one? Sweatman? I do believe he was in that trophy dash also. So as you can see, she outran some of the best that day at the trophy dash. And the crowd went crazy. They always like it when Jessica does well. Okay, and the first heat of the evening was the Outlaw Compacts again, and that one was won by Nat Barber. I'm trying to get your name right there, Nat. That's an 8-lap heat race, and he won that over number 18, Jason Getz, and that made him where he could start up on the pole for the big main race. Now there were a couple of other heat races and of the legends, and the late models got out there for some hot laps, but the first main race of the evening was the 30-lap Outlaw Compact race, and because Nat had such a good starting place from his heat race, he was able to lead every lap in his racing against child abuse, or excuse me, racers against child abuse Volkswagen that he runs with the number 97 on it. Woohoo! Now, Racers Against Child Abuse is a foundation that Nat and his wife have started, and they've got it set up on Facebook. So if you're a race driver and you want to get involved, give them a look-see on Facebook there, because we all know there's no excuse for child abuse. Okay, let me give me a drink here from old Sterling.
You're watching In the Pits with StockCar Scott.
One other thing about the Outlaw Compacts, they're kind of like the mini stocks down there, except for as Nat was telling me, they get to do a little bit more stuff to their engine. They don't have to leave it as stock as the mini stock guys do. Hence, I guess, stock and outlaw. I'm looking forward to seeing them again. They're like a touring series around in this area, and hopefully I'll get a chance to see them up at Evergreen, or maybe Nat was telling me that they're going to run a fall classic division there out at Yakima, so that should be a lot of fun. Okay. One of the next main was the Columbia River Legends, and that was some sort of qualifying event for when they're getting together towards the end of the season. I guess if you win that one, you qualify to race in another one down the line. But it was won by a regular, I've seen him there a couple of times at South Sound, a fella named Randy Schaff. I hope I pronounced that right. He has just become a Facebook friend of StockCar Scott.
Woohoo!
Really appreciate that, and congratulations on your big win there.
Woohoo!
And then after the Columbia River Legends was the big show, the 200 lap Miller 200. They had a pretty nice field of 16 late models. Kelly Mann, like I said before, had fast time, so he threw the big die and came up with an 8-car invert. That put number 55, Chad Hinkle, on the pole in his Lexar Holmes late model there. And starting in 4th place was the number 4 of Parker Stevens,
who cannot lose.
He had a little bit of trouble there before they could even finish the first lap, though. Coming out of turn 3 into turn 4, got a little bit squirrely and did a spin around. But because they hadn't even finished the first lap, he was able to get back into this position at the restart. So they restarted with Chad and Mike Ober's second, and Dana was third. Stevens was back to 4th. Now they ran that way for a little while. Actually, I do believe Rhodes was on the outside at the restart, but he fell back some. And J.J. Hamilton, Tom Sweatman, Kelly Mann, they all made their way up from mid-pack, and they worked their way forward, you know, as the race went on. Then the caution came out. The first caution was my Facebook friend there, Molly Helmet, and her number 90 was doing a little travel racing there down at South Sound. She usually runs up at Evergreen, but she brought out the first caution, and it wasn't the first bit of bad luck she had that day. I heard that earlier in the day, before the race even started, her car caught fire. So it looked pretty good in the race, but she did have to start back in the back, and as we know, stuff happens back there in the back. During the restart, Sweatman was able to use the cone and the restart to his best advantage, and was able to pass a bunch of cars on the outside along with Kelly Mann, and before you know it, they were up into the lead. Of course, I think another caution came out with Rhodes having a problem, and then of course Molly had another problem as she was racing back there with number 2, Tommy L. Stone, and this was all happening before the first break. But as I said, mostly it was Mann up front once he got to the front, and then just before the 100 lap break, there was a big 5-car spin in turn 3, and this got Hamilton's car a little bit damaged on the front. He had to go to the pits and do a little work on that, but he was able to get back out before losing a lap. And then they got on out and finished off. You know, he had to start back in the back some, but they got out and finished off the first half, first 100 laps, with Mann leading. I think Sweatman was second, I could be wrong, and Stevens was third.
Parker Stevens.
Everybody got a little while to work on their cars and then get back out for the second half. Of course, Kelly Mann led a lot of the beginning of the second half, which during this time, Hamilton in his number 11 is working his way back up to the front, and Sweatman, unfortunately, he had problems during this time, which put him back behind the wall. Let me give me a...
You're watching In the Pits with StockCar Scott.
Thank you there, Nick.
Yes, sir.
That second half ran with Kelly Mann, J.J. Hamilton, and Parker Stevens running first, second, and third for quite a while, lap after lap after lap. And you can see, if you watch the footage that I've got on YouTube, Hamilton keeps getting close and getting real close. Sometimes he's close enough to take off Kelly Mann's bumper cover there on the back. He gets under him. He gets, you know, all sorts of bumping, and Parker Stevens is just sitting back there watching. While all this is going on in front of him, Kelly Mann is trying to hold off J.J. Hamilton, and Stevens is just sitting back there watching. And then, with about 5 laps to go,
Parker Stevens,
it really got good, folks. Hamilton got his nose up under the backside of Kelly Mann and took them both up the track. And while they were trying to gather it up, around on the outside goes Parker Stevens and leads the last 4 or 5 laps to win the Miller 200. And it was all, everybody loved it. It was wonderful. It was his his second win in late models and only his 3rd start. He won the big Firecracker 125 back on July 5th, and it was wonderful. But one of the nicest things about it was last year's winner for the Miller 200 was his dad, Dirk Stevens. So it was a really, really great family deal. And let's see, finishing second was Kelly Mann, who was able to gather it back up, and J.J. Hamilton finished 3rd, even though he had tried so hard. Just one last drink here. Let me give me a quick drink.
You're watching In the Pits with Stock Car Scott.
And you hear that in the background, that is the Miller 200 going on as I talk to you. Now, after the race, I had a bit of fun. I went in the pits and did a couple of interviews, and you can see both of them on my YouTube channel. So go ahead and give them a couple of views. And talking about views, folks, I've been watching how some of the views have been going up, and I'm appreciative and amazed, especially with the last, whatever it is, 50 laps, 20 laps of the Miller 200. That one has gotten over 200 views, and I appreciate every single one of them, folks. So, into the pits I went to get a couple of interviews. Nat Barber was kind enough to wait around to do an interview with me. Even though his race had finished hours before, he waited around. I guess he watched the race too, but stayed and did an interview with me. And what did I do? I messed his name up about 5 or 6 times during the minute-long interview. So, Nat, thank you very much. You're a great sport, and it's great that you and your wife have this support group, the Racers Against Child Abuse. And the other fella that I interviewed was the winner of the Miller 200, who was very nice to give me an interview, especially after I started right out of the gate by referring to him as Kirstie Alley's first husband, Parker Stevenson, who was also one of the Hardy Boys. And I don't think Parker Stevens is near old enough to have done a TV show back in the 70s.
But Parker Stevens cannot lose.
There you go. Thank you. And I really appreciate both you guys being such good sports and doing the interviews with me. And that's something I'm going to have to start doing a little bit more of as the season goes along. Now, one thing I do want to get to about this weekend is, first off, I want to apologize to a lot of the people that I talked to during Saturday night at South Sound Speedway. I had started getting the same type of information that you were there on Facebook, and people texting and all that sort of stuff about the tragedy up in upstate New York with Tony Stewart and Kevin Ward Jr. And I might have said a few things that may have given an inclination that it was less than an accident, and for that I apologize, because I was speaking without enough information. And you know, after having given some time since the tragedy and having people ask me stuff because they think I'm supposed to be some sort of racing expert, which I'm not, you know, it's just kind of sad that the only time racing comes to the forefront with the other sports around is when something tragic happens. I mean, what, last couple of weeks ago I was complaining that they don't talk about racing enough up here, and then this happens. So a lot of people talking on Facebook, a lot of people have some valid opinions, and you know, a lot of people are talking out of a place where they shouldn't. But everybody deals with their tragedy and their grief in different ways, and this is my way of dealing with it. Sunday morning, Kevin Ward Jr. came to consciousness and looked around, and as far as he could see were different types of racetracks. Over there was a 2-mile oval and a 1/4-mile oval in front of him, a half-mile dirt track to the side, you know, all different types of racetracks. And he was having a hard time believing what he was seeing. And on these tracks were all sorts of cars. And as he's looking, he feels this big hand, warm hand, grab him by the neck. And he looks up, and there's Dale Earnhardt. And Kevin goes, "You're Dale Earnhardt, aren't you?" And Dale says, "Yeah. And you, son, you're in racer's heaven now. That's what you get to do for eternity, is race, win races, race first and second, third, race hard as you want to, because this is what you were in existence for, is to race, just like the rest of us here." He points over to the 2-mile track and he says, "Look over there, we got some open wheel guys. Greg Moore, Dan Weldon just got here not too long ago. And over there on the half-mile asphalt track, we got some stock cars racers like Benny Parsons. Bobby Hamilton's with us. You know, Davey Allison. Kenny Irwin Jr. and Adam Petty, he's about your age. Maybe y'all would like to race against each other sometime." And then Dale points over to where there's a dirt track. And there are lots of dirt racers out there. And one of them that he notices, that Kevin notices, is Jason Leffler racing one of those dirt sprint cars. And he says, "I get to do this forever?" And Dale says, "Yeah." And he's looking over there, and he sees this number 14 come beating, banging its way through the crowd, hitting almost every sprint car he could on his way to the front. And Kevin goes, "Oh no, you're not telling me that Tony Stewart also perished in the crash that took me?" And Dale goes, "No, son, that's God. He just thinks he's Tony Stewart." Kevin goes, "Oh, wait a second. Do you think I'll ever get a chance here to race against Tony Stewart again?" And Dale looks at him and says, "Son, this is racing heaven." Okay, with that, one more race to cover, and that is the Cup race at Watkins Glen. It was a great race, mainly because of how it ended. That last lap was fantastic. I hope you got a chance to see it. Of course, to begin with, Tony Stewart did not make the race, which was all right, all well and good, as it should have been. Reagan Smith got to drive the number 14 car. Tony has already announced that he's going to drop out of a couple more of the sprint car type races. So he's got some healing to do himself, folks, and I really wish people would quit beating him up so much on the internet. But anyway, back to Watkins Glen. The old man started on the pole, which was great, but he broke about halfway through the race. Something went wrong. They were able to fix it, but he finished lousy. But that lousy finish meant that Junior, with his 11th place finish, was able to take the points lead. And the race, folks, it was a triumph story. It was a triumphant comeback. Now, of course, the race was down to, at the last lap, down to Marcus Ambrose driving for the King, Richard Petty, and A.J. Allmendinger, who was driving for a single car team for Brad Doherty. And I don't want to say they're underfunded, but they are a small team. And he's been trying since he almost got kicked out of NASCAR to make that comeback. As you remember, a few years ago, he was taking some sort of supplement that he shouldn't have, and it came up positive in the test, and he jumped through all the hoops. He did everything that NASCAR wanted him to, and he has now been rewarded with a Cup victory. He is one of the ultimate comeback stories that we've heard in a while. He could easily have become the next Jeremy Mayfield, but we won't go there. But congratulations to A.J. Allmendinger. Now he is not only a Cup winner, as he pointed out, he gets to be in the next year's All-Star race and in this year's chase. So way to go, A.J. in a Chevrolet. So that covers last weekend. Next weekend we'll try to get through real quickly here. NASCAR has nationwide racing again at a road course. Remember the one a couple of weeks ago with the Indy fellas at Mid-Ohio, where that's where nationwide is this week. Hopefully none of the Cup drivers will interfere. The trucks on the same day are in Michigan. That's always a good race. That night, Saturday night, the K&N Pro West Series will be out at Monroe, and that is where I will be watching what is essentially AAA racing for NASCAR. These guys are guys that you're going to see more of in the future. It's the first place where I got to see Kwasniewski there, anyway, Kwasniewski, and who's now in the Nationwide Series, and you also get to see a really good race. I mean, and the local late models will also be there. I'm hoping to see Gary Lewis run his number 73 Chevrolet. Also that night will be street stocks and mini stocks down at South Sound. So I'll have friends running down there like Brian Bykirk in the street stocks, and Kevin Conway giving you a shout out there in the mini stocks. So that leaves us with Sunday. Sunday will be an ARCA race there at Duquesne, Illinois. It's a great dirt track race. It's a mile dirt track, and unfortunately they don't show it on TV. One of the best races of the season, and they don't show, no one shows it. And then also the Cup race at Michigan. Juniors won at Michigan a lot, so I'm hoping to have big things to tell you next week. But then so is my wife, because Greg Biffle has won at Michigan a few times, so maybe her guy can get a win to get her into the guy into the chase. Okay, folks. Well, I hope I touched on everything for you this week. Really had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope to see a whole bunch of people, maybe even like get to see Junior out at the track this weekend waving the flags up in the flag stand. Until then, we'll see you here on In the Pits.
Be sure to join StockCar Scott on Facebook and subscribe to his YouTube channel, StockCar Scott. We'll see you next Wednesday, folks. This has been In the Pits with StockCar Scott. Thank you to Monte Carlo Express Delivery for their generous support.